Wait a minute.
Okay.
Oh, it is that. We can
Okay. Or just introductions. My name is Steve Seaney. I'm with a firm called Rego Consulting. That's a project management consulting firm.
And I'm Sushanth Mangalore. I'm a solutions architect at AWS.
What we're going to talk about today is we're going to just lead you through the story and the benefits that we've had with using Control Tower to manage a fairly large and complex organization that we had to bring up very quickly. 150. It's a SaaS application of a monolithic application, and each we've intentionally deployed it so that each one is in its own unique account for security purposes and also to make it more deployable. So. Rego Consulting. So Rego Consulting is historically a boutique project management consulting firm. We have under 500 employees. We vary depending on our activities. We started in 2007. Up until shortly before COVID, our entire focus was on IT project management consulting and helping clients with a few specific applications like Broadcom's Clarity, ServiceNow, some other types of applications like that. Right as we went into COVID, we had an opportunity to acquire or manage half of a SaaS application. That's about 150 clients as a data center was being closed down. And that's where we started our SaaS journey. The key thing about that was there was a hard end date that was being driven by an Oracle expiration, and we had to end it on October 30th. And the contract wasn't really signed until June. So we had to move very rapidly.
So we'll talk more about Rego's journey with AWS Control Tower, but I just want to set the table here. How many of you are familiar with Control Tower? You know what it's used for, are already using it? Just raise your hands. Okay. And if you're using AWS already, how many of you follow like a multi-account strategy versus a single guard account, as I like to call it? Okay. All right. So let's talk about Control Tower. So why this came to be, this service, I think has been around for about 2 or 3 years now. But the reason for this stemmed from the fact that there were a lot of guard accounts that existed in different customers' environments. So one account packed everything into it. And the challenges that came with that is you're not able to do proper cost attribution for different workloads. You are running into account limits from time to time. Your security and everything else, your production, non-production was mixed up. So there were a lot of challenges with operating in that manner. And we started to recommend to our customers that you should really be using a multi-account strategy. It doesn't cost you anything extra to have multiple accounts. You get a bill for this account, you get a bill for this account. You could have a common payer account, you can roll everything up to that. So it made a lot of sense. But what then started to happen is that these accounts started to go out of parity or compliance. So maybe the security controls were tight on one account, it was not so tight on the other account. Maybe certain services were turned on here, but not here. So you wanted some kind of a governance mechanism when the account sprawl started to happen. So that's where we started promoting the concept of a landing zone. So a landing zone, as you can think of, like a real landing zone for an airplane or something like that, it's where your workloads land and they're just going to work, right? So we have this idea of a well-architected framework, and a landing zone is what we call a well-architected multi-account setup. So if you do it right, it's just going to do the right things for you, and it's going to work out of the box for all the things that you need. But the landing zone, the initial rollout of that was actually just a mismatch of different services cobbled together. So config, CloudTrail, IAM, all of that came together and you had a landing zone. And this was something that our professional services and some of our partners used to come and set up for different customers. So we wanted to make it more self-service. And that's where AWS Control Tower became a service. So now, I think there's another slide where we just talk about how easy it is. But what you do is, with the click of a button, you have to provide 2 additional email addresses and the email address for your management account, and you get all of these things. So you get a landing zone, you get centralized identity and access, you get controls, previously called guardrails. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that term, and automated compliant account provisioning, or what we call account factory. And this is something that once you set up, you can continuously manage as well. So these are the things that come, and there is no coding or any other heavy lift required to turn this on. Like I said, it's a click of a button, takes about an hour or less at the first attempt when you set this up, but it turns on a whole bunch of things for you, which then you can just go and start provisioning your workloads into. So like I mentioned, the automated landing zone, the account factory, the guardrails, you get a dashboard where you see your compliance and how your accounts are either measuring up well to the compliance standards that you have established, or if they're out of compliance, they'll show you a red indicator that, hey, we are out of, this account is out of compliance. Maybe there's something you need to take care of. We have automated log centralization, which is one of the best practices because each one of your accounts are creating logs, and each time it creates that, you want to a central place to view it. Similarly, if you have security services turned on in different accounts, you want all of that to go to a central place as well. So all of that becomes a lot easier with Control Tower. And at the end of the whole turning on of Control Tower, this is what you get. So you get a management account, or what you call, previously we used to refer to it as master payer, but we don't call that a master payer anymore. We call it the management account, and make use of all these other peripheral services like CloudFormation stack sets, service catalog, which helps with the account factory, AWS organizations, which I'll talk about later. IAM Identity Center for centralized identity management. And you also get these two base accounts, which are the log archive account for centralizing your CloudTrail and config logs. And you get the audit account, which allows you the ability to centrally audit all the other accounts that are part of your organization. Plus you get the config aggregator, which will allow you to look at all the resources from across your accounts through a central place. And in this section, you get a bunch of provisioned accounts. And you don't get that from the start. This is something that you need to create. But you can create as many of these, and you can organize these by organizational units. So organizational units are logical groupings of AWS accounts, which you can uniformly control through different compliance mechanisms. So I'll pause there and I'll let Steve talk about Control Tower, Rego's journey with Control Tower. What were some of the unique challenges that they had, and how Control Tower helped them solve it? And then I'll go into some of the best practices with Control Tower.
So, sorry, let's go back one. There we go. Come on. Okay. So again, with our journey, what we had a business opportunity where we could take over a SaaS application. We had about 150 clients that were going to be that opportunity. We had a hard stop. They had to move on October 31st, and we were starting this transition. We started it back in March, but we actually didn't have a contract to do this until the end of June. Okay, so we had to move really quickly. And at the same time, we knew that architecturally, we needed to put each client in their own account. Okay, and that's a really great way to do it if you're, especially if you're running a SaaS application and you don't have you have an old monolithic application, because you can isolate everything. Okay, it's also great from a costing perspective, from an audit perspective. One of our clients is Her Majesty's Royal Customs. They want to come in and audit their account. It's the IRS for the UK is one of my clients. Okay, so we actually can give their auditing firm access to their account and say, when you want to come in and audit their account, you can come in, and they're walled off logically from the rest of our organization. So there's lots of great reasons to do this. Okay, so our first challenge was, the only thing I'd ever run on AWS was a bunch of stuff that we set up manually. We'd never used the CDK. We'd never used its CLI. Nothing was automated. It was just manual stuff. So we had to figure out how we could rapidly deploy this. Okay, not just stand up the infrastructure, pick up and lift and shift their databases, move them in, make the changes that we had to do, and integrate them into ours. We had a lean operations team. We hired a consulting firm. They said we needed 50 people to run this globally. The owner of our company, we're a family-owned company. He said, I can give you 20, right? And then throughout the negotiations, he said, I could get down to 13, right? Well, I run it on 7. We have 7 FTEs that run a $10 million business that have 150 accounts with about 600 databases. Okay, globally. We also offer third-tier support in that group. So through this automation, through Control Tower and the other automations that we've been able to do with this, we run really lean and really cheap. I mentioned we had a hard project end date. If we slip back up October 31st, their Oracle licenses were expiring. There was no slip on this thing. Once they expired, business was gone. We ended up having to have 150 or more AWS accounts. We were right on the bleeding edge of the custom control tower framework. Okay, so the out-of-the-box solution didn't work for us. There's a custom framework. I mean, we were right on the bleeding edge of that. In fact, one of my humorous things is I keep, for the next couple of years, things that kept dropping into Control Tower were things that we created tickets on because we couldn't figure out how to do, right? And it's kind of neat. You see AWS respond to that, but for us, we were behind. And I've mentioned before, we have the hard closure in date, okay? The lessons learned that we had, as we look back, Control Tower has come a long way since then. But one thing is keep current on your Control Tower continually. If there's a new version of Control Tower or the custom framework that comes out, we update it within a couple of weeks. As soon as we're satisfied, there's no major defects, but we roll it out. That helps you really keep things on top. We implement all controls by default. Now, organizationally, our structures are laid out regionally. So, we have, we support the UK, we support Europe, we support Australia, okay, and the Pacific Rim, Japan, Latin America, Canada, and the US. So ideally, we would support every guardrail or every control tower, kind of security feature, right, or limitation on our, automatically. But there's some you can't do. And there may be some that you need to do in Europe that you don't have to do in the UK. So really go crazy. Our default policy is we deploy a guardrail no matter what. That's really helped with auditing. And by the way, for those of you that go through SOC audits and FIPS audits, this is great. Okay, this is like a great tool because you now can lay everything out. Automate account and resource provisioning. This was pretty crude when we started. It would take several hours to deploy an account. We had to do them one at a time. We had 150. Luckily, it was during COVID, so none of us were leaving our basements. We pretty much had to run things 24/7. This has gotten a lot better. And there's even more frameworks now that you can leverage. I can't think of the term, but you can actually have it, you can set more of a default environment that will come in and pull in your stacks that you want to pull in automatically. Centralized security tooling. This is a huge benefit for us. So what we did with Control Tower was we also went along and we deployed Security Hub and all of the AWS core security services. So when we stand up an account, all these are set up by default, right? We can't forget about them. When we get audited, I don't have to look back through and say, why we didn't employ guardrail in this account, or why is Macy not running in this account, right? Everything comes in and it's there, it's centralized. It's in an audit account, so it's really easy for you to say only a handful or a subset of people on your DevOps team have access to that account. Okay. We use IAM for SSO. We integrate with Microsoft SSO. That's worked seamlessly for us. When an account is created, the right groups are there. If you need a special group, we can drop it in. That's also nice. We're a small company, and that lets me have a layer of separation between my IT group that controls who's in each account and who's in each group. Right? I don't have that. I have to open a ticket for that. It gives me traceability for my auditing. Right? And I just have to apply which groups go to which accounts. So from an auditing perspective, if you have to deal with SOC audit, that handoff is usually pretty important. We utilize lifecycle events and organization events. We also utilize Security Hub events to automatically, again, we only have 7 of us globally. So we're trying to automate everything we can. The other things that come out of this, if you're using the AWS pieces, is it's really easy to automate and monitor patching. So we've had to go through an audit or upgrade almost 1,000 Oracle databases at once on a weekend. And because we're so consistent and we use everything with stacks, and we start with Security Hub or with the Control Tower as our framework, we can easily go through and patch our EC2 instances, patch our RDS instances, and produce reports for auditors that say, all of our EC2 instances and all of our Lambda instances are 100% patch compliant in the last 45 days. And then the last thing is the audit account that it sets up gives you a great place to monitor and maintain security, that you're totally isolated and walled off. So you can have a security team, or a security person on your team that only has access to that account. So with a logging account, you can just wall that off separately. So
what do you have to do if you want to turn on security or Control Tower today, and what are some of the best practices that you want to follow? Let's talk about that. So like I said before, this is what you get out of the box. You get the pair account, log archive, audit account. Your audit account can usually double up as your security account as well. So that becomes like your delegated admin for security services such as Security Hub. So if a security issue is found in one of the provisioned accounts, sends that finding over to the audit account. So the security team has to go to just one central place to look at all the findings. Similarly, there are other services like Guard Duty, IAM Access Analyzer, Macy, all of the ones that allow delegated admin functionality. You can make your audit account the one place. The other thing is the security cross-account roles. Not many understand this very well. I had authored a blog about this, but what this allows you to do is, this comes with two roles. One is a read-only role and one is admin role, which has access to all the other accounts that you provision inside your control tower. And that those roles can only be assumed by a Lambda function. So you can spin up Lambda functions here, which can go across your different accounts in the control tower and do pretty much anything that a Lambda function can do. So if you want to check how many EBS volumes I have that are on GP2 that I can maybe migrate to GP3, or how many Route 53 hosted zones do I have across different accounts. So all of that, you can just simply spin up a Lambda function and it can go do that for you. All right, now let's talk about how do you organize your OUs and what are some of the recommended OUs that we've seen customers implement and be very successful with. So the sandbox OU, if you have a large development team and you want to allow them to experiment, that's where the developer accounts go. Every developer gets their own account. You can put budget controls on that they do not exceed more than a few hundred or few $1,000s every month. Within that, they can use any services they want, experiment, innovate, do whatever they need to do to bring more ideas to your business. Workload specific accounts, those are, I always recommend segregating by workloads first and then by life cycles. I've seen customers do prod OU versus non-prod OU, but not all your production workloads are going to be the same. Not all your non-production workloads are going to be the same. So what you want to do is first segregate by workloads. So if you have like, I don't know, say an e-commerce application and supply chain application, for the lack of better examples. So you'll have workloads or OUs for the e-commerce application. And within that, you'll have separate accounts for your production and non-production. So that way, most of your controls are going to remain the same because controls usually tend to be workload specific and not life cycle specific. Although your production controls have to be tighter than your non-production controls, but segregating them by workloads usually makes sense, or business applications make sense. Policy staging. Okay. We talked a little bit about controls or guardrails, but there are three variations to it. So there is the preventative guardrails, there is the detective guardrails, and now recently we introduced something called proactive guardrails. So the preventive guardrails are implemented using something called service control policies. And service control policies are things that work at a higher level than IAM, and they can deny different permissions within accounts. So even if the individual accounts have root permission or admin access, the secure SCPs override all that. So with SCPs, you want to be very careful too. So before you go and apply an SCP to an OU or an account, you want to test it out. So you create a separate OU just to test out your SCP changes because it can have very large scale effects. So you want to be sure exactly how it's going to behave before you apply it. Suspended OU is for accounts that if you're like running a SaaS business like Seaney, you want to maybe offboard a customer. So you first move them to the suspended OU, and from there you decommission all their resources. Individual users outside of developers, if your business users, they need to send some numbers from S3, you put them their own accounts. Exceptions are accounts that do not fall under any of these other ones because they are exceptions for a reason. And you understand that you have provided some kind of security or governance exceptions to those accounts for particular business needs, and you put them in their own OU. And lastly, for things such as CI/CD or automated patching, like using Systems Manager, you can have your deployments OU, which can do all that across your infrastructure. All right, so that was a journey for a new customer. Now imagine that you already have an AWS environment, and it can feel like a big lift moving into Control Tower. And before it was even not possible to make use of your existing accounts and bring that over to Control Tower, but we have simplified all that now. And you can pretty much use your existing account. The only thing that you want to be conscious about is that for your management account, we ask that, or we recommend that it doesn't have a whole lot of workloads, because the management account is only intended to be used as the governance account. So it is only there for your billing and for applying security and SCPs on your other accounts. So keep that as lean as possible and move all your workloads into workload specific accounts, right? And then all the other things that you already have, if you're already making use of IAM Identity Center or SSO, Control Tower will latch onto that, provided you use the same home region for Control Tower. Your config, you may want to turn that off, because Control Tower turns on its own config. Same for CloudTrail. CloudTrail, before it used to set up a trail in each account individually, but now it sets up an organization trail, which applies to all of your accounts. And then those logs get centralized into your logging and archive accounts. So it's quite easy. Even if you're an existing customer who are quite a few years into your AWS journey, it's still not too late to adopt Control Tower. And Control Tower doesn't cost you a cent. You're only paying for all the services that it orchestrates, like config and CloudTrail. And usually it doesn't make a dent into in your bill at all, because these are all peripheral services which just provide you some security and governance that you need. All right, so this just in summary, Control Tower is making use of AWS organizations and all the benefits that come with it. So things like centrally provisioning your accounts, sharing resources across multiple accounts, or optimize and organize your costs, and finally, integration with security services like Steve had mentioned. And some of the use cases, again, here are rapidly innovating with provisioning resources for each team. Sorry. Organizing your AWS accounts by business processes or businesses, simplifying your billing. So the best level of cost attribution that you can get on AWS is by having separate accounts. You can obviously do tagging, but you'll always forget to do tagging. And then you'll wonder, why is this costing me so much? But if you have different workloads segregated by different accounts, you can go exactly look at, this account is costing me this much. My e-commerce application is costing me this much to run every month. And this is how much I'm making in revenue from spending that much. So you get the perfect show back or charge back for every application. Lastly, for implementing all these different functionalities, these are the services that we make use of internally. So like I said at the start, Landing Zone orchestrated a bunch of services, but you could actually see them. With Control Tower, you don't see them unless you want to go see them. So it happens under the tower. It makes use of CloudFormation. It makes use of Systems Manager, Service Catalog, all these other services that you see here. Systems Manager is very underappreciated. It's one of my favorite services on AWS. I call it the SRE personnel Swiss Army knife, because there's so much you can do with it. And I'm sure the 7-person operations team that Steve is able to run today is partly or largely due to combination of Control Tower and Systems Manager, because patching, the compliance check for different automations, all of that, the playbooks, runbooks, all of that can be done using Systems Manager. What else do I have? Trust Advisor, by all means, make use of it. Another free service, gives you a lot of great recommendations. And again, you can centralize all of that into your audit account and look at it from a central place. All right, that's all I really had for today. These are our email addresses. Forgot to put my LinkedIn on there, or LinkedIn, but feel free to catch us in the hallway. And if you want to connect, we can. Any questions that I can or Steve can answer for you today? And I don't know how we're doing on time.
3 or 4 minutes. So.
Okay.
So I work in an organization that has their accounts. Is there a tool or solution migrate things
So how automated is your infrastructure creation? Like, are you using IAC already, like Terraform or CloudFormation? Because then it's just a matter of spinning up into a specialized account of your own.
Not as much as we should.
Okay. So that makes it a little harder, but there is some tooling available. Have you heard of Former or something like that? Former 2. It allows you to create cloud formation from existing spun up resources. So with that, you now have your infrastructure documented as code, and then you can use that to spin up the same resources. If you're just trying to do that by hand, it becomes a little hard. The other option is, again, running API against existing resources, getting their properties and codifying them through IAC. And then when you spin up your own specialized accounts, you can create those in the same infrastructure in those accounts as well.
So we migrate stuff.
Yeah, I mean, DMS or logical snapshotting and replication. So Control Tower, until recently, it did not even have an API. So there was just the console, which allowed you to create the initial setup. But if you're talking about specific guardrails, or for example, there are different levels of configuration for guardrails. If you're doing like a detective guardrail, that's all AWS config, right? If it's preventative, it's all SCP. So there's not one central configuration for Control Tower. It's made up of a few different levels of configuration. There's security configuration, there's the account factory configuration, and most of it is just YAML. So the account factory is service catalog is CloudFormation. Any other questions?
Customer, they want to onboard the.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really confused for this.
Mhm. I guess we can talk about that. The advantage that you get with Control Tower's Cloudtrail is that it's automatically already centralized to send your logs to the log archive account. I don't know if you're already doing some kind of log centralization, but I think there is an option to turn it off at an organization level, but I'll have to look into that for you. But the reason we recommend an organization level and not a individual account level trail is that if you duplicate trails, it costs you more as well. So for that reason. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't fully agree with that because we create roles with the least privilege principles in mind. There are places where admin access is required because, for example, your root account needs admin access to all the other accounts that are part of your organization. But I don't think we are creating too many admin roles that are not really required to be admin. But let's talk about that.
When I look at some of the guardrails too are preventative and they're SCPs that are sit on top of your account. So to me, the benefit there is so my master account, I got to make sure I protect that. But I think those SCPs would really protect everything. There's no tomfoolery that can go on. Right? It doesn't matter what's centrally. And from an InfoSec perspective, I can walk into an audit. We've been audited out the master audit, a few months after you're up stuff too. That goes through the Deloitte audit client next week, and just produce the control tower stuff. But that was all separate. That's needed.
But I'm curious to really know what roles they are that are over permission. We can talk about that and see if there are any opportunities to tweak those. Cool. All right. Thanks everybody for attending today.